This Kings team under Doug Christie, they just keep fighting back. Every single time. Every single time you think they might be out. Nope. They're in it every single time. I mean, this game was looking so bad at halftime. So bad. Felt like everything was going wrong for the Kings against an undermanned Warriors team. I was thinking at halftime, I'm like, this is an interesting game to break down. I feel like there's a lot of things going on to talk about. I felt like that first half was the first time I'd been really disappointed in this team since almost a month ago in Doug Christie's first game in charge, which was the Lakers game. Because since then, I mean, there's only been one loss, which was the Bucks game. I wasn't even really disappointed in that game. So I was just thinking at halftime, well, I mean, it's pretty good to go almost a month without being disappointed in your basketball team. But then the third quarter hits and they just come storming back. And I feel like there are so many players that I could say are like the player of the game. You know, whether you have Sabonis with his insane stat line, DeMar hitting shot after shot, Keon coming in and making a massive impact. But the guy that I just loved in this game was Keegan Murray on both ends of the floor. Because defensively, you saw his versatility from guarding Steph Curry. And then, you know, Keon will come in the game. He'll guard Steph a little bit. So then Keegan's more guarding on the back line. Or he was on Andrew Wiggins for a lot of the game. But then he was always active, trying to be the one to switch on to Steph and not let the Warriors get other guys into the action. He was trying to be the one that would pick up Steph. And then he would go back onto Steph when Keon was out of the game. And then he had just a massive fourth quarter, where at the start of the fourth quarter, it felt like he was a one-man defense at the rim, taking everything away, rebounding the ball. And then towards the end of the game, again, they take Keon out and they throw Keegan back onto Steph, and he locks him up. And Steph took that just crazy three-point shot that, you know, Steph can make just at the start of the shot clock. Of course, Steph can make that shot, but I think Steph taking that shot really signaled that he can't get a shot anywhere else against Keegan. Keegan was just chasing him around and not letting him get any shots off. And then offensively, it may be crazy to say this, but it almost felt like he turned a corner offensively in this game. And it was a game where he went 1 for 5 from 3, 6 for 11 from the field. So we went 5 for 6 inside the arc. Because I have been mad at Keegan for so long. Every time the Kings play the Warriors stick Steph Curry on him. And I'm just like, there has to be a way that we can take advantage of this. And this was finally the game where Keegan took advantage. Every time he caught the ball, he just went straight at Steph. There were still some times where I was like, man, just dunk the ball there. You know, he missed the one layup where it felt like he could have dunked it. But the fact that he was attacking Steph, using his size and finishing around the rim, it was so nice to see from him. There was one play where he kind of had him, what could have been in the mid post. And again, he did the thing where he like started to back it out, and he'll back it out way past the 3-point line usually. But he just took one dribble where it looked like he was going to back it out into a crossover attacking again. It was like, you had me in the first half. I thought you were going to just back that out to the perimeter. I was going to get mad again. And he just went straight at him. So I think this was just such an impressive game from Keegan Murray. But I think it was an impressive win from everyone, being able to battle back in that second half, overcome the Warriors shooting 45.8% from 3 on the game. And I'm looking at the stats right now. This isn't correct, although I do think that 3-point percentage is correct, but it says they went 43 for 92 from 3. That definitely didn't happen, but I think that 3-point percentage is still correct. And obviously I'll go through this whole game, but I really think this game turned in near the start of the third quarter when Keon Ellis got put in this game. Because Keon only played 8 minutes in the first half. And I hated that. Because while I've been on the train of you should start Keon Ellis, I don't believe in this starting group long term. And I felt like the first half was kind of a great encapsulation of my thoughts about why I don't think this should be the starting unit. Because it just felt like everyone was kind of slow and you weren't getting to second balls. And it felt like the type of game where you needed to force some turnovers. And I'm like, the perfect guy to turn the tides of the game is Keon Ellis. And I'll read you some of my tweets from this game. I said, at halftime, I think is when I tweeted this, Keon needs more minutes. This is exactly the type of game that he can turn the tide of. And then after he came into the game in the third quarter, I said Keon should play the rest of the way if he can. Because the Kings offense, like they found their footing at the start of that third quarter, but the defense just wasn't there. And Keon comes in, makes just a massive impact, locked up Steph a few times, but was just making an impact by getting deflections and being in the passing lanes. And I just think he balances the lineup so well. And then I loved what Doug Christie did, because I don't think this is something Mike Brown would do, where he puts Keon Ellis in, and then you could obviously see the Kings go on a big run, and they just continue to go on a big run, and he just keeps Keon in the game until like the very end when he brought Fox back in there. So it was the defense that turned the tide in that third quarter, because in the first half, the Kings half court offense was just bad. Keegan had the first 5 points of the game for the Kings. He had a nice floater over Curry, again punishing him inside. Then he hit a three. But everything just seemed kind of slow, and the Kings couldn't get out in transition. They didn't force any turnovers, which is a big deal against a Warriors team that turns the ball over. You want to turn them over. And for this Kings team that wants to get out and push the pace, and everything just seemed slow in the half court. Not a lot of movement. There were just some times where it felt like the ball could be moved quicker, and guys were just holding on to it for a half second too long, or they were driving into the lane and trying to find the guy in the corner who was covered instead of the guy up top that was wide open. There were just some odd decisions offensively. It just felt like a game where it's like, okay, finally we're not on this game. It just didn't seem like it was our night. Things weren't clicking. From a defensive standpoint for the Kings, things went pretty well in the first quarter. Their game plan, of course, is just blitz Curry. And Kevon Looney was starting in this game, and so you're just like, you can play 4-on-3 on the back end. That's fine. Kevon Looney, go make a play. Gary Payton II, go make a play. Like, those are the two guys in the starting lineup that you want making a play, and that worked pretty well for the Kings throughout most of this game. And I think the Kings defended the initial actions really well for that in that entire first half, really. The Warriors weren't beating us in, I guess, the normal way of Curry just flying around, coming off screens, hitting threes, even Buddy coming off screens and hitting threes. Like, that wasn't really happening. I mean, everything was on the perimeter because we were pushing them out onto the perimeter, and then they could make a pass inside, but this is just a really poor finishing team. And yeah, Kevon Looney, Gary Payton II, Trace Jackson Davis, go ahead, make something happen inside. The problem really came when that initial play would break down. And then it felt like the Kings kind of would lose focus, and they weren't first to the loose balls if there was a deflection. Or again, they would defend that initial play, but when that play would break down, then they wouldn't keep going. And so that's how guys would get open, and Wiggins got open a few times and knocked down some threes just because those extra rotations weren't there. Moses Moody kind of the same. And of course the Warriors were hitting an inordinate amount of threes. And so, hey, you could have just lost this game and chalked it up to the Warriors just hitting some threes. And of course, there was more that the Kings could have done about it, but they did hit some pretty crazy threes at times, and guys were just really hot. But the win and loss column does not care about what you think the averages should be. It's just what happens in the game. And so for the Kings to be able to overcome that was pretty impressive. But Wiggins always seems to kill the Kings, and he had 25 and took 20 shots. And again, that's just like the Kings' wing depth, and they want to put Keegan, we want to put Keegan on Steph, and so then it's like, okay, who's guarding Wiggins? It was Fox quite a bit, and that's not a great matchup. And I thought Fox, he was just letting Wiggins find these angles too easily. Like, Fox wasn't totally up on him for the three, but then he also was kind of letting him by and get angles towards the rim. And I think if it's a smaller player that Fox is guarding, that's fine. Fox can make up for it with his quickness and athleticism. The problem is Wiggins is quick and athletic and also way bigger than him. So if he gets the angle, he's going to finish. Sabonis was carrying the offense early. He had a quick 7 points, including a 3. He airballed his first 3, but then he hit his next one. There was also an interesting play where Malik is coming around a Sabonis screen, and Sabonis pops out to the 3-point line, and Schroeder stays on Sabonis, which is just not something we've really seen. Guys usually leave Sabonis. Monk will find Sabonis and he'll hit a 3. So the Warriors finally adjusted. They put Schroeder out there. They switched. And so Monk does hit Sabonis, but then Monk immediately relocates with Trace Jackson Davis on him. Monk relocates to the three-point line. Sabonis finds him, and Trace is just too slow to keep up. It created an open three-point look for Monk. So, and he missed it. Kings were not shooting all that well, or at least Monk and Fox weren't. But that was one play that was very interesting because it's like, okay, Sabonis' three-point gravity is doing something here. A little later in the game, or a lot later in the game, we also saw Sabonis pump fake, Trace Jackson Davis up in the air, and he goes by him and draws a foul. So those are two plays where Sabonis is drawing guys out to the perimeter on him. That is the number one three-point shooter in the league, ladies and gentlemen. But to end off the first quarter, the Warriors, at one point, they were 6 for 10 after Moody hit a tough three. DeMar and Fox both got a couple of middies, and that was Fox's only field goal until one of the last plays of the game. Len came in, and the Kings' first half rotations were interesting, and I think Doug Christie does this where he'll just throw some guys out there in the first half and then shorten the rotation in the second half and get serious. But Len was out there, and we had rebounding issues. It's like if you're playing Alex Len, like you shouldn't have rebounding issues, but we do because he's not a great rebounder. And so we had Len out there, we had Herter out there. I'm just like, man, if these guys weren't out there, we'd be so much better. Hard to complain about that when you look at who the Warriors are running out there, but still. I will say to start the second quarter, Alex Len immediately catches a pass on a roll, hits DeMar out in the corner for a three. And it's just kind of funny because I've talked about this a lot. And I when I did my mid-season player evaluations, this is the main thing I talked about. Alex Len has been a great passer this season, but that is something that should be an add-on to the other necessities that he does as a center, which rebounding is a big one. And so it's like, great that he made that pass, but he needs to be able to do more. He did chase Curry off the three-point line, which was hilarious. I thought he was going to foul him. He didn't. But it, like, Devin Carter got lost, I think. And then he has to run all the way to the other corner and contest a Gary Payton three, which he did. So a solid start to the second quarter for Alex Len. I don't know why he had to run around on the perimeter. I think just it was a little bit of a rough start from Devin Carter in those minutes. He was getting lost a little bit defensively. He then went under a screen on Wiggins, I think. Yeah, Wiggins. That led to the 4-point play where Len fouled. So a couple of rough, I thought, defensive sequences from Devin Carter and Alex Len there. And then offensively, Alex Len not providing too much inside. Devin Carter was also pretty rough offensively, although he did hit a catch and shoot three, which is nice. The thing with Devin Carter is he needs to be wide open when he's shooting these threes. He can't have someone on him because with his release, it's hard for him to get those shots off. But the Kings, they just needed to play super fast, but when you're running Alex Len out there, it's not great. We did get a quick Lyles three running, so that was good. But the lineup was rough. We took DeMar out, and it's just like, okay, Fox, go out there with Devin Carter and Alex Len and Trey Lyles, and who was it? I think it was Keon Ellis. I don't think it was quite Kevin Herter, or maybe Kevin Herter was out there, and it was really bad. I can't remember. But, the lineup was just really bad. But surprisingly, that's not even when the Warriors really started taking off. I mean, it's kind of when they started, but a lot of it was when the Kings had their starting unit in there. But the bench unit did look a little lost defensively. And then with that starting unit in there, the offense, it was just too slow. It was too slow. There wasn't enough movement. It was like, throw it to DeMar, we're just going to watch him. Fox has the ball in the perimeter, we're just going to watch him. A little bit of that. Guy Santos, of course, just roasting us from three. He went 4 for 5. Kings fought back a little. Another Sabonis three, of course. Sabonis just always hitting these clutch threes to stop momentum. And the Kings started playing a little bit faster. They got some rebounds. They forced some turnovers. And they pushed the other way. And they got to the line. There was a sequence where Sabonis got to the line. Then DeMar got to the line. Then Fox got to the line. And Kings were knocking down their free throws, which again, I can't quite believe what I'm watching with this team in free throw shooting, especially in the fourth quarter. But then the Kings went to a zone. And it was just confusing because they immediately gave up an open corner three. And I'm like, the Warriors have been hitting all their threes. Now you go to this zone where it looked like they were more committed to guarding the paint and they give up an open three and luckily got a miss. But yeah, then Monk gets that steal. And this is an interesting part because, like I said, the Kings were kind of getting some momentum back. And I think they were within 8 when Monk gets that steal. And he goes for the reverse dunk. It bounces off his head. I mean, a crazy thing to happen. Bounce off your own head and out. And, that's whatever, right? Like, Doug Christie talked about kind of taking advantage of home court advantage. And he talked about how Malik Monk was really good at that because he gets the crowd going with these things. And so it's like, yeah, he went for a dunk. I don't really care about that he missed it. Like, if it becomes a habit, then sure, but I don't really care. It's more how the Kings and Monk responded out of that, which was not good because they got another stop after that. But then Monk comes down, turns it over again. Then he gets back cut by Curry. Soft foul gives him an and one. And so it wasn't like the missed dunk itself, but that is kind of what started the Warriors' big run. And it was just because they started compounding that air. And Monk compounded that air. And that's something he did throughout the entire game. Monk just every time the Warriors got a little momentum, Monk would be like, double that momentum. Here's the ball back. So it wasn't great. Although to be fair, he did hit a big 3 after this. But it was kind of one of those shots where he was trying to stop the momentum, so he just took a 3. And it was just one of those shots, and he did it like 3 times this game, where he took it upon himself to stop the Warriors' momentum. And he went 1 for 3. He hit this 3, but 2 other times, I think it was, he missed inside or turned it over. And so I just don't like these moments of kind of taking it upon yourself to stop other teams' momentum, because I think more times than not, that gives them more momentum because you make a mistake. It's like if you take it upon yourself, you have to get it right. And so Monk did on that 3. So, can't be too mad at that. But I thought there were a lot of good defensive possessions. Initially, the Kings were getting deflections and the Kings were forcing certain players to get the ball inside. And they were getting their hands on balls, and so many possessions, it looked good. But then the Warriors would come up with that loose ball, and then they would kick out and hit another 3, or they would get an open layup. And so there were so many times where it felt like they were so close to making that defensive play that could swing momentum, but they just couldn't quite get it. And that's where I'm like, this is where Keon is most useful. Like, this feels like a game where you need a defensive playmaker out there because you're not good in the half court offensively. You're not getting these stops. Warriors are turnover prone. Keon's your man, but he wasn't in there. He only played 8 minutes in the first half. And you had Herter playing 6 minutes, Devin Carter playing 4 minutes, Len 6, and Lyles 7 off the bench in that first half. So you're giving just these random guys minutes. But then guess what? Alex Len, Kevin Herter, and Devin Carter all finished the game with those amount of minutes. They didn't play in the second half. But it was just a defensive collapse towards the end of that second quarter, not being disciplined on closeouts, and Monk flying by and Buddy hitting the 3. And then also you just have to tip your cap to some of them, because Guy Santos was hitting some crazy 3s. Moses Moody throughout this game hitting some crazy 3s. And it was Steph Curry who only had 1 3 and went 1 for 4 from 3 in this game. To start the third quarter, things definitely started out well. The first few possessions, you force Gary Payton to miss at the rim. Again, that's what you want. You want him going at the rim. Sabonis runs the other way and finds Monk for a layup. Wiggins missed the 3 finally. And then DeMar hit a midi. Keegan, again, attacking Curry. And he uses the Sabonis Gortat screen, which was beautiful. I feel like I've never seen him do that before. And he gets the and one, didn't convert it. But the problem is they weren't getting enough stops. Like I said, Wiggins was getting by Fox too easily. Monk was getting blown by a little too easy on the perimeter. The start of that third quarter, there was no perimeter defense from Fox or Monk. And then inside, Trace Jackson Davis, he wards DeMar off. Whether you think that's an offensive foul or not, I don't know. But then Sabonis just comes from behind. He has no chance of blocking it. And again, just with this the lightest of pushes, like that's obviously a foul, and just gifts him the and one. I'm just like, you can't do that. That's my biggest gripe with Sabonis, is he's gifting these guys easy and ones, and he gets himself into foul trouble. Wasn't in foul trouble this game, but those easy and ones. Monk gave up an and one to Gary Payton. And at one point in this game, you had the Trace Jackson Davis insane and one. There were so many and ones for the Warriors. And so they just weren't getting enough stops. But they were sticking around because they finally got their offense going. So they just needed to be able to get some stops to get back into the game. Keegan again going right by Curry, and he missed that layup, but Sabonis was there to clean it up. You had the Fox to Monk oop. So it was just faster offense, getting out in transition. That's what we like to see. And then because the Kings were offering no resistance on the perimeter on these drives, they go to a zone look, trying to take away the perimeter and obviously allow no threes. And on the first possession, they forced Buddy Hield to step out. So a turnover there. The Warriors were great taking care of the ball in that first half, but they ended the game with 19 turnovers. So the Kings in that zone, that zone worked really well. There were definitely some rebounding problems out of the zone. Of course, it wasn't perfect. But I really think what the zone allowed the Kings to do, especially when Keon Ellis came into the game, was you just unleash Fox and Keon at the top of this zone to just go wreak havoc with their quickness, their ability to get steals and deflections. And so when this zone works, it really works. And we've seen that a few times from the Kings, especially under Doug Christie, when you just allow Fox and Keon at the top of this zone to be defensive playmakers. We've also seen it with Monk, and he's been a good part of this zone as well. But not only that, we've seen DeMar from his spot in the zone be able to come up with steals. So I feel like you're allowing your defensive playmakers to get in on the action when you do this, because we have defensive playmakers in Fox, Keon, and DeMar. They all know how to get steals, and that was leading to easy offense on the other end. Kings just dominated the fast break points in this game, 28-0 in fast break points, which is insane. 27-16 in points off turnovers. Warriors were 19-8 in second chance points. So I feel like that's kind of the trade-off of the zone. But as the Kings were getting those stops, Keegan was still going to work offensively against Curry. There was one possession where Keon just locked up Steph. It was so beautiful. DeMar took over. Then that was when DeMar decided, I'm going to get us back in this game now. He was getting into his bag, and the Kings, they were just, again, sticking around and just like inching closer. But while DeMar was going off, Curry went out of the game, and Wiggins was responding a bit. So that was a little rough when you have DeMar hitting all these shots, and then Wiggins is just responding, just getting angles too easily. When you have Trey Lyles guarding him, he's giving up those angles to the rim. But with those turnovers and fast break points, the Kings were just inching back in. And then you had the big moment where the Warriors turned it over. They just threw it off Sabonis' foot. And so it's one of those where Sabonis was literally standing there. He didn't know anything about it. His foot was stationary. So obviously he's not kicking the ball. But in the way they've called it in the NBA for a bit, it's like anything that goes off a foot is a kickball. Although it's funny because earlier I noticed in the game, the Warriors threw it off their own guy's foot, and it also wasn't a kickball. So the refs were consistent in that. There were two moments, one benefited each side, but of course, Steve Kerr got teed up because it was a turnover. Lyles had a tough finish on that transition moment, and it was a 4-point game. Fox got a steal. DeMar finished in transition. Wiggins missed. DeMar attacked again in transition, getting to the line. So it's just forcing turnovers, upping the tempo. That was what was key. And then on that last possession, Keon locking up Curry, blocking him, and then Fox just missing that jumper. That would have been crazy because we tied it up, going 37-20 in that third quarter. If Fox would have hit that, that would have made the place explode. But then we go into the fourth quarter, and the fourth quarter was crazy because it was just so back and forth. The Kings had the momentum going into the fourth quarter. Keegan got a steal right away and a layup, but the Warriors responded. Keegan also got a block that resulted in that Keon Ellis and one. I like defensively the way that every time someone was on Steph, whether it was Keon, Keegan, whenever the center, it was Quentin Post at the time because Kevon Looney went out with an illness in this game. So it's Quentin Post. The Kings were trying to switch somebody, say Keon was on Steph. The Kings are trying to get Keegan on Quentin Post so that when Post goes to set that screen, then Keegan can switch onto Steph or Fox. They're also doing it with Fox. So you just want one of Keegan, Keon, or Fox on Steph. You don't want Sabonis to get in that action. You never want Lyles in that action, right? And so I liked how they were doing that, but the Warriors started hitting their threes again. Buddy hit one, then Moses Moody hit a tough one. And then it led to another moment where I feel like Monk just compounded his errors. And he tried to immediately attack on the other end into like three guys, turns the ball over, Warriors come down, hit a Buddy Hield transition three. That put the Warriors up 7. So you're like, man, we just did all this work to come back. Now we're down 7. We got to like do it all again. But then the Kings come roaring right back. And Keegan was just a beast during this period. Inside, rebounding the ball, blocking shots, affecting shots around the rim. He was just doing it by himself down at the rim because everyone else trying to guard the perimeter, and he's left alone against, a poor finishing team in the Warriors, but he still has to contest those shots. He's not Rudy Gobert in there, he's not a center, but he was doing it very well. He ended up with 2 blocks in this game, and the Kings went on a run of their own. Sabonis got a finish. Monk hit a big 3. So again, Monk, he definitely had some errors, right? But then he would come back and he would make something good happen. So it's hard to be too mad at that. Like there was one play where he just has a horrible turnover and then he comes back, gets a steal and just lays it up or dunks it on the other end. So it's like, even though he had a horrible turnover, it was a net positive. But yeah, he hit that 3. Keon hit a big 3 to retake the lead. DeMar hit a bailout deep 3. He was just on one. Keon had a steal off of Monk's ball pressure, and he went down on the other end and finished. And when I saw that happening, Keon gets the steal. It's him 2-on-1 with Monk, and Monk's asking for the alley-oop. And I'm having flashbacks to the 5 messed up alley-oop passes that Keon has thrown Monk recently, and then also the one last game where Keon didn't throw it up and then just failed to finish at the rim. Or maybe that was not last game, but whatever. So I'm just like, how is this going to go? But Keon goes up calmly and finishes. So he was able to finish it off in transition. So Kings go on a run, Warriors go on a run, Kings go on a run. Guess what happened next? Warriors go on another run. Wiggins 3. And then he got to the rim and finished. Guy Santos 3. DeMar missed 2 good looks during that period. I was just like, man, are they ever going to go away? But then you have Sabonis pump faking out at the 3-point line. I think they were down 3 at the time. Trace Jackson Davis falls for it. Sabonis goes, tries to dunk it, gets hit on the arm, goes to the line, knocks him down. Kings were perfect from the free throw line in the 4th quarter, and that was huge. They ended up going 30 for 32 from the free throw line, almost 94%. Then you had a play where Sabonis and DeMar, they're trying to switch inside. So you get Sabonis on, I think it was Quentin Post. But then Trace Jackson Davis back cuts DeMar because DeMar never really found him while he was trying to switch. So the Warriors get an easy basket there. And I'm just like, man, you can't afford those. Then the Warriors were at the free throw line. They missed the second one. We were down 1. And then we don't come up with the rebound. It goes right to the Warriors and they just dunk it or lay it up, whatever. I feel like that's happened so many times to the Kings. They're not a very good rebounding team on free throws. And so those were 2 mistakes that I was like, oh, this just can't happen late in games. But then there was one defensive possession that I feel like was just so amazing and changed things. So it was Monk in a pretty bad spot because the Kings are, trapping Steph like they've been doing all game. The ball gets swung out to Wiggins on the wing. He's got a shooter in the corner, and Monk is able to close enough, but also take away the pass, make him hesitate. Then he closes to Wiggins. Fox recovers quickly to the corner, and there's no shot attempt. So that was a great play by Monk. Also good rotation by Fox. Then DeMar got switched onto Wiggins. He contested the shot really well, and Sabonis came up with a huge rebound. So I just feel like there were so many things done well on that defensive possession. That created an opportunity for Fox to attack in transition, to get to the line and tie the game. So that was one of the most important plays of the game from everyone. And then the Kings just shut it down. DeMar midi. Fox gets to the line for free throws. Monk attacks in transition, gets to the free throw line. You have that Curry heave because he couldn't get anything else, and he only had like 11 shot attempts on the game. Yeah, it's 11, 14 points, 12 assists. That's kind of what he's been going through all season. Just he has to be a playmaker because everyone's throwing everything at him. It's like, yeah, good luck, Kevon Looney. Like if Buddy wants to hit 5 for 9 from 3, then you do that. But then another Fox transition attack to get to the free throw line. So the Kings, every time they go to stop, were immediately attacking. And this is something that the Kings have struggled with at times late in games where they haven't kept the pace up. But we saw how poor the Kings were in the half court earlier in the game. And so for them to keep the pace up in these moments and be able to get to the line was just huge. Fox drew that offensive foul on Quentin Post, goes down, hits the clutch step back mini. I mean, that's just gutsy because Fox was just having an awful game. Awful game. He had to hit 1 out of 10 shots at that point. But late in the game, relentlessly attacking, getting to the free throw line, drawing that offensive foul, then hitting the step back midi. Coming through in a massive way. When he had 6 points for most of the game, it looked like he was going to end with a season low in points, but he comes through when it matters. Then you have that foul, Sabonis fouling Moody on the 3-point shot, but challenged. And that was interesting to me because obviously Moody kicks out, right? Isn't that an offensive foul? I feel like kicking out like that is an offensive foul. I mean, he's literally kicking Sabonis. That's an offensive foul. And we had the same thing last game where Alex Len gets elbowed in the face. We challenge it. They say, oh yeah, it wasn't a foul on Len, but it also wasn't an offensive foul. So I don't know what's going on with the refs in these challenges being like, oh yeah, it was a successful challenge, but not an offensive foul. I just don't know how that is, but it's a jump ball. We lose it because we suck at jump balls. Sabonis, that's not his thing, of course. And the Kings killed a lot of time, but Curry did end up getting the layup. But that was okay because it was a 2-possession game when that started, 6-point lead. Curry gets the layup, take a bunch of time off the clock, still a 2-possession game. And it was a tough layup. And then it was kind of perfect because you come down on the other end, the Warriors aren't fouling and you're up 4. So you're up 2 possessions, but if you kill all this clock, there's only going to be like 15 seconds left in the game. So even if you miss, you're still okay. But Monk, who cares? He said, who cares? We're just going to make this. We don't need that time. Goes in. Sabonis did a great job making room for him. And then he took like just one extra dribble than I think Wiggins was expecting and was able to get to the rim. I think Wiggins is expecting him to explode and go right at him at the rim, but he just takes that extra dribble and goes by and gets the easy layup. And then Fox iced it from the free throw line. So that was very long, but it was just such a good game. Such a good game. Like even at halftime when we were losing badly, I'm like, I'm excited to talk about this. And then of course the second half happens, and it was like what happened last season in the in-season tournament, kind of, right? And there may have even been another game like that. But I mean, the Warriors are prone to blowing these leads. And I never felt like the Kings' game plan was off in any way, at least defensively. They just needed to be more locked in, be first to the loose balls, make sure they're on point with their rotations. But then, of course, you had the adjustment from Doug Christie to go to the zone in the third quarter and play Keon Ellis much more. And that resulted in great things. A game where Fox just can't score. Monk was making some bad plays and didn't really show up big until the fourth quarter. He didn't necessarily have a bad game, but it's like when Fox is having such a bad game, you think you're going to lose if Monk isn't having a great game. But it was Sabonis going 26 points, 18 rebounds, 8 for 8 from the free throw line, 8 for 12 from the field, 2 for 4 from the 3-point line. Wild stat line, and he continues to just knock down his threes. When he airballed that first 3, I'm like, okay, finally, we're going to have an off shooting game from him. But no, 2 for 4 from 3. He was great when it came to containing Steph when they trapped, because that's something that sometimes he struggles with, where guys will get around him, which is the last thing that can happen when you're going out and trapping. I don't think that happened once, and they did it a lot with him and just dominated the interior, massive rebounding. DeMar, 12 for 21 from the field for 32 points, 3 for 6 from 3. He continues to just up his 3-point volume, and he's been successful. And I think, I've said it before, I think that's key. He just needs to take, a few more threes than maybe he's used to, and that's what he's doing, and he's making them. 2 steals, 2 blocks for DeMar, carried the offense, carried us offensively back into that game. And I gotta say, I'm just so thankful that I get to witness DeMar DeRozan, maybe not in his prime on my team, but like still very much capable of being an elite scorer. And man, when the Kings looked like they were down and out this season, I was just thinking, man, are we really doing that thing where we waste DeMar's time here at the end of his career and it becomes like a Celtics Shaq moment, even though he's nowhere near as washed as Celtics Shaq, but someone was posting that. I'm like, that can't happen. That was when he had like 2 points in a game at one point, but now here he is with 32. And I think I saw somewhere that it was like 7 straight 20+ point games. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like I saw that somewhere. Keegan, 6 for 11 from the field. 13 points, 2 blocks, a steal. And of course, elite defense, like I talked about. Don't need to talk about that anymore. Just absolutely elite defensively. Fox, an awful first half. We don't need to sugarcoat that. Bad defensively as well. He tried to drive inside, but he was getting swarmed and he just couldn't make the right plays out of it. It's not like this was another 0 for 8 from 3 game. He only took 3 threes. He was attacking. He just couldn't really make anything out of it. But then down the stretch, in that third quarter, he was a big part of the defensive turnaround. Once they went zone, that freed him up and he was much better defensively down the stretch, attacking time after time to put this game away. It really was wild how DeMar got us there from like the third quarter to the last 3 minutes of the fourth. And then Fox, who had 6 points, I think, when it started, just said, I got it, and scored 8 points from there. And that's what you want out of your star player, that even when they're having a bad game, they're still like, I got this. And of course, if it goes badly, then you're like, why doesn't DeMar get more touches? But the thing is, because they were playing so much in transition, it's not like this was a half-court setting where you have to decide who gets the ball. It's just Fox pushing on the break. And I'm sure if they went into the half court and Fox hadn't made those plays happen, then I'm sure DeMar does get the ball. And then Monk, 20 points and 9 assists, 3 steals, a block. So it looks like he had just this incredible game. It was up and down for him. 7 for 15 from the field. His stat line just looks immaculate. It wasn't that good. There were times he was getting scorched defensively. He made some bad momentum plays, but then again, he just comes through when it matters, kind of like Fox. Great playmaking, attacking the rim in transition, and Fox and Monk are the biggest parts. Sabonis, Fox, and Monk. Those are your 3 guys that push the pace in transition, and that's what the Kings needed to do. That's what it ended. That was one of the things that ended up winning them this game. So huge plays from Monk there down the stretch. The bench, you have Keon Ellis, who played 21 minutes, 8 minutes in the first half, 13 minutes in the second half, 8 points, 2 steals, a block, 3 for 4 from the field. But I don't even think that stat line does him justice, for what he contributed and how he kind of turned this game around. He is just such an incredible defender. I feel like at times he struggled with Steph, and that's like fair enough, right? I feel like he's locked up so many great players, and he's had some good games against Steph, but I feel like sometimes he can get a little overzealous and, jump past a pump fake or get in foul trouble with Steph. That didn't happen this game. He was all over him. I will say, I do think Steph definitely, you can tell he's lost a little bit of his explosion there, but it's still impressive nonetheless. And then the other big impact guy off the bench is, of course, Lyles, who's perfect from the field, 2 for 2 with a 3, 2 for 2 from the line, 7 points. Just came in and gave some solid minutes. He had to guard Wiggins for a little bit. That's just not something he should be asked to do. But I thought he gave solid minutes. And then just quickly through the other guys. Alex Len, I already talked about. Not a great rebounding performance. Felt like he clogged things up, but I don't really think he should be in the rotation, especially when you have Isaac Jones killing it in the G League, going like 40+ points and then 30+ points tonight. And Kevin Huerter plays 6 minutes, misses a 3, misses a mid-range jumper. Again, just kind of looks out of sorts. So he only played 6 minutes. And then Devin Carter only plays 4 minutes. I think with Devin Carter, he has just kind of come in at the wrong time. And this is what I thought was going to happen, where you come in during a time where the Kings just have to win games. And so it's just going to be tough for him to carve out a role for himself when he didn't play Summer League, when he didn't play preseason, when he wasn't able to get minutes during kind of the roster trying to figure out what it was early in the season. So he plays 4 minutes here and he made a ton of mistakes. He knocked down a 3, But then in the second half, we're like, we can't afford those mistakes to make this comeback happen. And so hopefully the Kings will get some games where maybe they have it in hand a little bit, and so we can see a little bit more of him and he can get comfortable because he just needs time out there. But man, if the Kings can just pull off one trade here so they don't have to play Kevin Huerter or Alex Len, this team is looking so dangerous. And there are just these rumors. I mean, today alone, we heard the Kings are so close to getting Cam Johnson. It's just about the Kings want it to be a protected pick. The Nets want unprotected. We hear another thing. The Kings haven't talked to the Nets in weeks, and nothing's close right now. So I'm like, okay, great. So we know nothing, but still I'm very excited to see if something happens at the trade deadline because the team's looking so good right now. Imagine if you add to it. But this, of course, has just been such a fun stretch as a Kings fan. And now we head into a very difficult stretch where it's all road games. 6-game road trip. Come home for 1, go on the road for 1, come home for 1, go on the road for 3, come home for 2, go on the road for 4. It's a lot of away games here. And, you know, this team, I don't think they've lost at home with Doug Christie, right? No, they haven't. They've lost 2 away games. So they've turned things around at home. But the good thing is they've been a good road team. So they go into Denver tomorrow night. And I'm so glad they got this win so that I can say I have zero expectations for that game in Denver. Denver has been playing so well. They have Aaron Gordon coming off the bench on a minutes restriction. I don't know if he'll still be on a restriction tomorrow night. But you have Westbrook in the starting lineup. And so the Kings are going to have to cope with the athleticism and rim attack of course, Jokic, Westbrook, Aaron Gordon when he comes in, and I know he hasn't been as good since, coming back from injury, but still, of course, very dangerous. Christian Brown, who's been very good this season. So this is going to be a game where the Kings they have to sell out to protect the paint, pretty much. You have to sell it to protect the paint, and then you just have to be ready to rotate out to shooters, and that's really easy to say and really hard to do, especially when they're going to be on the second half of a back-to-back in altitude. We got all the excuses loaded here, so if the Kings actually come away with a win in this game, it's going to be incredible. But we've seen Sabonis have good games against Jokic before, and we've seen the Kings have success against the Nuggets. The Kings lost the last game to the Nuggets by 1, and honestly, I can't totally remember that game. I remember Aaron Gordon hitting a really clutch 3. I remember being very disappointed. Oh, I remember the Nuggets didn't miss in like the last 5 minutes. It was just elite offensive execution from Jokic and from the Nuggets. I would say the Kings have to come out and match the Nuggets' pace because the Nuggets are going to get out and they're going to get fast break points. I mean, that's going to be tough to do again on the second night of a back-to-back, but if you want to win, you kind of got to be committed to doing that and getting easy offense in transition. So anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. Remember, don't take these times for granted because I know a lot of people, they get caught up in what's going to happen in the future. And of course, I even do as well. I mean, I'm talking about what we're going to do at the trade deadline. But the times like this, on a winning streak like this, we got to enjoy it because this team has been absolutely on fire for the last month. And it's a special stretch. So enjoy it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.